Good evening, everybody. My name is Val Holder. I am the PR and Media Communication Specialist for the Barbados Association of Retired Persons. Good evening to all of you. Wishing everyone safety and wellness, a sentiment that is so important these days, as we've all now experienced what it's like to experience a pandemic. And you know, health is so important today more than any other day. And so any opportunity to have as much information as possible about how you can improve your quality of life and live better is certainly welcome. So today is certainly very timely, and we're especially happy to be able to share this moment with you. So thank you so much for taking the time out to educate yourself about how you can live better. Interestingly enough, I woke up this morning excited about today's information session with Sir George. There's something that came to mind. For some reason, it came in the form of M's. And one of those things is your mindset, your movement in terms of making sure that you stay physical and keep moving, your meals as well, and also medication, but medication in the sense of those things that make you feel well. So I'm really glad that you could be here with us. It's a special evening, of course, and this is an opportunity where make as many notes as you want. And then after Sir George's lecture, you'll have the opportunity to ask him some questions directly as well. We ask that you please put your questions in the chat, or you can certainly raise your hand and we can have you ask your question directly as well. A little bit of housekeeping, please make sure that your microphone is muted unless you have been designated to speak at a particular time. We're all so glad that you could be here with us this evening. And so also coming up later this week is our second session of A Word With You. It's a poetry and literary session that's being hosted by BARP in association with Writers Inc. Incorporated. That's Writers INK. We had a wonderful start last week, and this weekend we'll have the second session, and then there will be a third session next Saturday as well. And those sessions begin at 4:30 p.m. So please save the date and mark it on your calendar. We're getting ready now to start. Your health is definitely always welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take this opportunity now for a welcome and opening remarks by the president of BARP, Bryce Boyne.
Thank you very much, Belle, and a good evening to all. Dame Billy Miller, Sir George Alleyne, our featured speaker, Honorable Lolita Applewhite, other distinguished members in the Zoom and our YouTube platforms, directors of BARP Board, trustees of the BARP Charitable Trust, management and staff of BARP, members of BARP, friends of BARP, members of the media, welcome. This evening, as I extend a welcome to all, I do so against the backdrop of, with a heightened sense of anticipation, as we are indeed awaiting Sir George's lecture. I do hope that we don't have to sacrifice too many items as we commence our journey in healthy living, healthy aging. BARP, as the beacon for seniors in the island, decided to offer this activity as we view health as a significant factor in the lives of our members. We recognize that we need to be healthy to enjoy our life, but equally as important, in order to offer guidance and support to persons in our society as we continue to build stronger communities. We are already faced with a growing number of cases of NCDs, and the negative and social the negative social and financial impact they have played in our society. The COVID-19 pandemic arrived unannounced and robbed a reservoir of some cherished members. So George, as the patron of the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, you must be elated, as we all are, to record that through vigorous advocacy, and I can say we because BARP is a member of the HCC, we have been successful in influencing government's decision to implement the 20% tax on sweetened beverages, juices, and soft drinks. This 20%, ladies and gentlemen, falls within the World Health Organization's proposal as they seek to increase the prevalence of childhood obesity. As parents and grandparents, we too must view our role as important, as the psychological problems linked to childhood obesity can negatively impact their lives. We at BARP recognize that healthcare is important, thus the BARP health insurance for our members. BARP recognizes that there is a pressing need for a national discussion, one that examines the pros and cons of aging in place, home care, and improving long-term care because we are all living longer. In the meantime, we need to learn from other countries with a high percentage of seniors and how they have successfully kept them as a meaningful part of society with sustainable financing. Japan, with its high number of old or super age, may be the ideal good benchmark. Today's event is the first of many, and I encourage you to follow our social media platforms, our radio programs, and the print media for all of our upcoming activities. Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to have as our guest speaker for the inaugural lecture by BARP, a distinguished Barbadian, Sir George Alleyne, himself a senior, yes, eligible to be a BARP member. He understands the health challenges of seniors in Barbados, the Caribbean, and Latin America.
Thank you so much to Marilyn Rice-Bowen, who is the president of the Barbados Association of Retired Persons. And we thought it would be fitting to start this evening off with a cultural presentation based around the written word, poetry. And this is poetry being done by none other than Barbados's first ever poet laureate, Miss Esther Phillips, who will be doing a piece entitled Village Keeper. Here's Esther.
Thank you very much, Val. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here. Special greetings, of course, to Sir George Alleyne. I think it is, yes, Billy Miller, Dame Billy Miller, I'm sorry. And then the president, Marlon Rice-Bowen, communications specialist, all the other distinguished personages. I was not giving a list, so please excuse me for that. And Professor Downs, of course. I am very pleased this evening to tell you about my poem, Village Keeper, which has to do with Miss Lewis. She was an aged member of our community. In fact, she was our neighbor, but she was one who refused to fit into the stereotype of remaining at home or keeping quiet. In fact, Miss Lewis really was, as I remember her being guardian of the village. She watched over the sick, and in one case, at least that I know, she actually intervened in the case of domestic violence. And even after her passing, in the poem, you see that she returns to the persona in order to reinforce some important values that have to do with the persona's identity, as well as her sense of community. The poem is Village Keeper. Who you is? where you come from, who you belong to. The Brathwaites from Kendall, the Holligans from Woodland, the Batsons from Four Roads that moved from Jordans to Cherry Grove. Miss Lewis claimed to be familiar with everybody's family tree, as if this knowledge gave the right of passage to strangers coming through. Not even death dodged past our village keeper. One particular night, from dusk to dawn, the dogs kept howling as if they're seeing something strange. Before daybreak, Miss Lewis knocking at the neighbor's door, "Get that boy to a doctor quick. I see Ma vigilant about this place last night." Ma dead long time. But the mother obeyed and her sick child lived. Once, Pearl Johnson, tired of her husband's beatings, plucked up courage and laid him low with a piece of iron. Miss Lewis seized the evidence and kept it hidden. This don't need no law getting into it. Everything done settled. Old Johnson lived, but never hit his wife again. Tonight, I hear dogs howling constantly. Is it you, long buried, walking through this city? Have you come so far to remind me who I am? Can you cover my trespasses? Are you saying not every death is necessary, if only we would listen? And why have the dogs gone silent now? The poem ends there, but the howling of the dogs, I've used that as a kind of a motif in the background to remind some of us, and there are many of us who may remember this, that the dogs howling at night meant, as some people believe, that there were duppies around. But of course, the question the question comes as to whether or not these may have been the spirits of the ancestors coming to warn us of some pending danger or harm. Miss Lewis, therefore, connects us. She's the connection between the present and the past. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the poem. Thank you.
To Esther Phillips, Barbados' poet laureate. Fantastic. Always a pleasure every time we have the opportunity to hear her creative and artistic words. And obviously the nostalgic effect that it usually has upon us. Thank you so very much for sharing some of your work with us this evening. Thank you. That poem was entitled Village Keeper. And this evening, I also have the distinct pleasure of introducing Director of BARP, Professor Andrew Downs, has joined us. Professor Downs, good evening to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Fantastic. And Professor Downs will be delivering the introduction to the lecture. Here he is.
Good evening, all, and thank you, Belle. Ms. Marlene Rice Bowen, President of BARP, other directors of BARP, including Dame Billy and the Honorable Lolita Apwith, and other members of the BARP Board of Directors. Of course, other members of BARP and those who would like to join BARP who are on the line. And of course, our very special guest, Sir George Alleyne. The issue of healthy aging is one that starts from the time we are born. But in the context of BARP, we are focusing on the over 50s and soon to be over 40s. That is those who constitute what we call the silver economy or society. The Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, and World Health Organization, WHO, has declared 2020 to 2030 as the decade of healthy aging. With an aging population in Barbados, that is persons who are 50 years and older, increased from 22% of the population in 1990 to an estimated 37% in the year 2020. So the issues of healthy aging and healthy living are central to the work of BARP. And as I said, when we include those who are over 40s, we would certainly take it up nearly half the population. So we need to consider both the physical and mental aspects of healthy aging and healthy living. It's indeed a great honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker, Sir George Alleyne, to enlighten BARP members and others on the topic of healthy aging, healthy living. When I first approached Sir George about addressing BARP on the issue, he rarely agreed to take on the assignment. In fact, I think, if I remember correctly, he was in Jamaica and told me as soon as he gets back to Washington, his base, he will let me know. And so he did as soon as he got back. Although Sir George needs no introduction to several persons who are viewing this lecture, his profile is one that needs to be highlighted as one who epitomizes the very nature of healthy aging, and I presume healthy living. Sir George was born in the Republic of St. Philip, almost 9 decades before Barbados became a republic, so I don't have to tell you how old he is. He now resides in Washington, but he's a distinguished Caribbean personality who has graced the world stage as a public health advocate. Educated at Harrison College, and unfortunately not common mayor, he won a Barbados scholarship in the classics. And I'm quite sure from time to time we've had, having done Latin myself, we've had that exchange of Latin phrases and history. But having won that scholarship in classics, he decided, like many persons at that time, to attend the University College of the West Indies, UCWI, and Mona in Jamaica, to study medicine. He graduated as a gold medalist in the MBBS program in 1957. He later migrated to the UK to the University of London to pursue the Doctor of Medicine degree, which he completed in 1965. So George has held several positions in the medical field over the years. At the University of the West Indies, he rose to the rank of Professor of Medicine before moving to PAHO, where he rose to the position of Director. His remarkable journey from St. Philip to Washington is chronicled in his autobiography, The Grooming of a Chancellor, which is published by UWI Press, 2018. And I was certainly encourage many of you to get a copy of this particular book. I read the whole book from cover to cover and found it in one swoop, I must say, Sir George, and found it very, very interesting and remarkable. Sir George has had a distinguished career at UWI and PAHO, such a distinguished career at UWI and PAHO, that he was appointed as Professor Emeritus of Medicine at UWI and elected as Director Emeritus at PAHO. My own personal close interaction with Sir George really started when he was appointed as Chancellor of the University of the West Indies in 2003. I know of him, and of course, I know his illustrious brother, who was a university student. But certainly my interaction with Sir George really started when he became Chancellor, and clearly as a senior official at the university at the time, we had to interact very closely. There's no doubt that he distinguished himself into position as Chancellor and enhanced the image and reputation of the University of the West Indies. He can certainly be regarded as one of the best chancellors that the university has ever had, in my view, and certainly many others. He was appointed Chancellor Emeritus after his term of office ended in 2017. As a Caribbean health advocate, he was appointed as the United Nations Secretary General's Special Envoy for HIV/AIDS in the Caribbean, and has actually written on the particular in a very interesting monograph on the issue. And he's currently the patron, as the president had indicated, of the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, which is a civil society organization focusing on non-communicable diseases, NCDs, which was founded by Sir Trevor Hassel several years ago. He also headed an important report headed the Caribbean Commission on Health and Development, which produced a very important report on health and development in the Caribbean in 2005. Indeed, Sir George is held in such high esteem that the Chronic Disease Research Center in the Faculty of Medicine and University of West Indies Cape campus was appropriately named after him in 2017. He was also awarded the Honorary Doctor of Science degree from the University of Toronto in 2017. In addition to his medical honors and expertise, Sir George was made a Knight Bachelor in 1990 and was awarded the Order of the Caribbean Community, OCC, in 2001. Sir George is a captivating speaker who is in very high demand. A list of some of his speeches can be found in the appendix 1 of his autobiography. So if you need to see all the speeches that he's given over the years, I would suggest buying the autobiography. I'm not sure if he will provide any royalties to me for that, but we will see how it goes. And there's also a collection of his papers in the book Health and Development in Our Times, Speeches of Sir George Alleyne, which has been edited by Henry Fraser and published by Ian Randall Press 2008. These papers complement his large number of technical medical papers and therefore worth reading. Sir George has been an adjunct professor of public health at the renowned Johns Hopkins University. And there's one thing about Sir George that I've noticed over the time is his vast knowledge of a range of issues outside the field of medicine, whether it be social, economic, and even sometimes political. But then again, one can argue that public health requires a broad knowledge of the environment with which health operates. Sir George lives by what he says. As far as I know, and I don't think he has stopped, he exercised daily, and I presume eats healthy. I remember very fondly the early morning walks that we had in Emancipation Park in Jamaica, followed by push-ups in Pegasus Hotel just before council meetings. When I watched or attended graduation ceremonies, when I was Pro-Vice Chancellor and he was Chancellor, I was always amazed when he could stand up for 13 graduation ceremonies and shake thousands of graduates' hands in his early 80s. And as I said just now, he looks just like that at this time. Indeed, he has stated in his book that he has greeted over 75,000 graduates during his term of office as Chancellor of the University of West Indies. I'm not sure many 80-year-olds will be able to do that. So George enjoys good social intercourse and of course, family get-togethers. He thinks very highly of his family, especially his sisters who are here in Barbados. And I wonder personally how he made it through the COVID pandemic. But I'm quite sure he found a way of engaging in social intercourse in some form or fashion. He's also known for his dinner time jokes, which are clean. And I hope that he gives us one this afternoon. As I indicated before, Sir George epitomizes healthy aging. And I expect that he will give us some useful tips on how to age gracefully, the Caribbean way, so that the Caribbean will become one of those blue zones that we hear about all the time of persons living long. And he will also give us a sense of what BARP can do to celebrate the decade of the aging, healthy aging. He's truly a champ, as he's affectionately called. And I look forward to the day when his brother would pen a song, Champ the Champion. I therefore invite Sir George to make his presentation on healthy aging. Thank you. Sir George.
Thank you very much. And I'm trying to figure out how to do this screen sharing. Yes, there we are. There we are.
Okay.
There we are. Thank you very much, Andrew, my friend. You are my friend. Although you're less of my friend now because you went on so long, but never mind, I forgive you. Madam President, Ms. Holder, Professor Downs, ladies and directors of BARP, ladies and gentlemen, and I have to give a special greeting to my sisters. I see my sister Leonora there, I'm sure Cecily and Jackie are there, and my wife is also looking on, and I'll be sure to hear afterwards what mistakes have been made or how I did. So thank you very much. Andrew alluded briefly, and those of you who don't do maths, let me tell you quite clearly what he meant to say that on October the 7th, I'll be 90 years old. I know he skirted around it time and time again. So much of what I have to say this evening really is a matter of personal experience. When I gave the topic to Andrew, I suggested the topic of healthy aging without sans everything. And that tickled Andrew very much because he thought that every Barbadian school child would know where sans everything came from. He would remember that the morose Jacques in Shakespeare's As You Like It had the famous soliloquy which said, all the world is a stage, and men and women merely players on it, and every man at his time plays many parts. And he went on to point out the last part, which was sans everything. Sans eyes, sans teeth, sans taste, sans everything. So what we want to do is to age and be healthy in old age, and not, in fact, satisfy the criteria that Jacques laid on for healthy aging. As George Burns would say, we can't help getting older, but we must at all costs try to avoid getting old. George, one of his famous statements of George Burns. Now, this is not the first time I have spoken about, as you say, the last scene of all that ends this strange eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. So our objective really is to make Jacques a liar and to say in the last scene of all, we will not be sans everything. This is not the first time I've spoken of aging in Barbados. 6 years ago, I gave the Arabara lecture here in Barbados, and how much nicer it would have been to be there in person with you to speak on this occasion, give this BARP lecture. At that time, I spoke of Arms the Hero and a Demographic Destiny. And Andrew will also recall the reference of Arms and the Hero, which is the beginning of Virgil's Aeneid. What I spoke then was of Errol Barra's vision and the extent to which he bore arms to guide the policies of Barbados that would avoid demography being our destiny, that would make our demographic destiny something positive and not something negative. So those of you who are interested, if you'll go back and look at it, you may find it even interesting, because there, not only do I speak of what Errol Barra did, but I also speak of the origins of some of the things that we do. Why, in fact, is retirement age around 65, and what Bismarck did to start the social revolution in Germany that made the retirement age around that period, even when life expectancy was much lower than that. So that was what I spoke of 6 years ago. But today I will be rather more different. I would speak less of policy and more of practice. And I will speak of some of the things to which I can attest as working. Now, a wag on the internet put down this, which is something similar to what Jacques said. And he looked at 12 different stages. And he said, at age one, we think of walking. Age 2, keeping dry. 16, that's when we start to drive. About 20, we start having, let's say we are having sex at 20. At 30, we are having kids. At 40, we are busy working, making a living. At 65, we think of retiring. And about 70, we start to enjoy our grandkids. And at 80, instead of having sex, we're thinking of sex. And at 85, we have to stop driving. And at 90, we go back to when we were age 2, and we worry about keeping dry. And at 95, instead of walking, we are hardly walking, we are hardly walking at all, or walking with aid. So what we would like to do is to change that, and not have to be thinking of all the terrible things that people assume happen to you when you age. What I try to sort of here graphically is what I consider the good life. At present, most people think of it as at age 55, you start to have some health problems, and the bottom line is lifespan. And at age 76, you die. And it's thought to be good if you still have these problems at age 55, but you live a little longer to age 80. And it is better still if you delay the onset of these serious problems and still live to age 80. But best of all is if you can delay the onset of these health problems and live even longer yet. So what we are thinking is that you can delay the onset of health problems and even have an even longer lifespan. That would be the best of all. And I've used the expression, I claim some credit for it, the rectangularization of life. And instead of life being like a broken triangle on the left, when you are born, you live for a few adolescent years, and then you start to deteriorate slowly, 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 until the morbidity catches up with you at the end. Whereas the good life is where you do not decline very much at all. And this morbidity, which was extended in the bad times, really is compressed into a very short period of time. So the ideal is to live a good, healthy life through the lifespan and then compress all of morbidity into as short a period as possible. This would be the good life. The rectangular life would be really the good life. And when we speak of the health, why should you wish to be healthy at an old age? And most, if you speak to the young people, they have one version of it. And they would say, okay, but I would contend health, the benefits of health are seen and are realizable at any age. At any age, there are benefits to being healthy. I think that being healthy contributes to the feeling of well-being. You feel better in of yourself. Obviously, health contributes to your living longer. And something that we often forget, even in the elderly, health is a productive asset. We like to think that health is one of the major components of your human capital. And you can spend that human capital in order to increase wealth. A nation's wealth depends predominantly on its human capital. And we like to think that the health in the elderly is just as much an aspect of their human capital as it is when they're young. And we like to point out, and there are good data to support it, that the health can be, once the elderly are healthy, they can be very, very, very productive indeed and contribute to a nation's wealth. And finally, I say that being healthy increases the range of human choice. Arthur Lewis said that wealth increases the range of human choice. And I say the same thing for health. Your health at any age increases the range of things you can do. It increases the range of human choice. As Andrew pointed out, there's a tremendous amount of international interest now in healthy aging as the world's population is aging. And WHO defines healthy aging as the process of developing and maintaining that functional ability that enables us to feel well, to be well in old age. And they think that WHO contends that functional ability means being able to meet their basic needs, being able to learn, grow, and make decisions. And I say grow deliberately, because even the elderly grow mentally, grow in terms of their relationships, to be mobile, to build and maintain relationships, and very important, to contribute to society. We like to contend that up to the last, the elderly do contribute to society. And when you age in a healthy manner, your contribution to society is even greater. And this is a figure that WHO has produced showing the interaction between three sets of things: the promotion of health and prevention of injury and managing of chronic conditions, the social engagement, and the optimization of your physical, cognitive, and mental health. They all come together, mesh together to result in healthy aging. And as Andrew mentioned, that the United Nations has established from 2021 to 2030 as a decade of the aging. And they have outlined 4 basic areas in which all countries will work. And I'm sure Barbados will work in these areas. I'm sure that the BARP already has a work plan for looking at these 4 areas. age-friendly environments, that the environments, but the physical, social, economic environments should be age-friendly. And in my previous lecture, I spoke a bit about what Harold Barra had done to try to ensure the economic health of the older persons, and I'm sure this is continuing under the present government. The idea of integrated care, non-discriminatory access to good essential services, not to discriminate against the elderly and take the view, oh, they're for the heap, they're for the dump heap now, so why worry about them? The elderly have the same right to good essential services as anyone else. Combating ageism, this pernicious approach in which the younger persons denigrate the activities and possibilities of the elderly, forgetting that one day they'll be old themselves, and combat the negative attitudes toward the elderly, and also to access rehab assistive technologies. Because many people contend that one of the reasons why the elderly are no longer as productive as they might be is because society has not provided the assistive technologies to allow them to be optimally functional. But, Andrew mentioned some of the demography in Barbados, and I will mention some of it briefly. The two columns, the sets of columns on the left, one is age 15, the other age 15 to 24, and they span 5 sets of periods. And we go from 2000, 2005, 2010, 2015, 2020. As you can see on the left, below the age of 15, the numbers of persons in Barbados decreased somewhat, about just over 20% in 2000 to about 18% in 2020. And 15 to 24, the decrease is there. It's not as great, the decrease is there. And from 25 to 64, you can see now, as Andrew mentioned, an increase in the numbers of persons in the older age groups. When we get to the 65 plus, it is more marked, as the increase is as marked, or perhaps as great as the decrease seen in the below the ages of 15. And the population over 80 as a percentage of males and females in Barbados, if you look from 1980 to year 2000, that population over 80 has been rising as really in a quite remarkable fashion, both for males and both for females. Indeed, the over 80 population is the fastest rising part of the Barbadian population, is the fastest increasing percentage-wise of the Barbadian population. So there's no doubt that there is a place for concern about the elderly, and I think I would convince you that the health of the elderly is important, not only for their own sakes, but also for society's sake. We know that the increase in the older population is due to decreasing fertility and also decreasing mortality in the young. When I was born, I say my mother's 7 children. I had about a 1 in 5 chances of reaching my first birthday, but all of her 7 children survive into adulthood. We also see perhaps an aging of a large population cohort. This is not quite as evident in Barbados. And due to socially conscious governments, there is better healthcare in Barbados, both public and personal healthcare. Barbados has been blessed with a long line of distinguished health practitioners, both in the public and the personal care areas. And that, no doubt, has also contributed to an increase in the older population. Fertility rate in Barbados has come down. When in 1960, you have about 4.3. I never can understand how you can have 0.3 of a child per woman, but never mind. The demographers say that you have 4.3 children per woman in 1960. And year 2000, is just over 1.5 children per woman. So fertility rate has come down, and consequently, the life expectancy has gone up. The life expectancy has gone from 65 years in 1960, approaching 70 for both sexes in 2000 and approaching 80 for both sexes in the year 2019. I'm sure you've heard Professor Hassel speak of these demographic changes often as he has spoken about the non-communicable diseases, which I'll come on to in a minute. Let me repeat this slide, which you saw earlier. This part in red, this compression of morbidity, what makes up this part? What makes up these problems that we want to compress? And we think that much of the morbidity we wish to compress is due to chronic conditions. And the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, Professor Hassel, has spent a long time telling Barbadians and the rest of the Caribbean of the magnitude of these problems. And we focus specifically on cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, chronic respiratory disease, and now mental health. We include among the chronic non-communicable diseases that are responsible for most of the morbidity in Barbados. And these are the things we have to guard against. And you've also heard him say that you can look at the risk factors for these diseases, the ones that are modifiable, the ones that can be changed by our behavior, and the other ones, the metabolic physiologic ones. The ones that are modifiable, things like tobacco, alcohol, diet, physical inactivity, and the metabolic ones, physiologic ones, blood pressure, overweight, obesity, and high cholesterol. And it's less so in Barbados than many other parts of the world. Air pollution is becoming to the fore as a major one of the risk factors for these non-communicable diseases. Now, what I would like to set out, what I call my 10 commandments for healthy aging. And I speak from more or less from personal experience. And I would guarantee you that if you follow these commandments, just as you will follow the original 10 commandments, life will be good to you. And number one is being physically active. We think 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week, or 20 minutes per day. And we insist that there should not only be the aerobic activities like walking, et cetera, but you must try to get in some resistance exercises as well. And I would emphasize, begin from when you're young. And this is something that I confess I have not been as good at as I should have been, is balance training. And I make a categorical statement. Except one is physically disabled, there is no excuse for not exercising. And just as an aside, Madam President, I was looking at its 54 establishments at which a BARP card will gain you a discount. I did not see one gym. I saw funerals, I saw hair salons, I saw beauty parlors, I saw grocery chains, but I didn't see one gym. So let me encourage you to encourage your members to be physically active. Having said that, and having noted the absence of access to a gym, let me point out as emphatically as I can, you do not need a gymnasium. You do not need an expensive membership of it, or the membership of an expensive gymnasium to exercise. You can walk for an hour every morning, 42 minutes, 45 minutes every morning. There are few people who cannot do that, who cannot take 20 minutes per day plus to walk, to be active. I am almost, I won't say fanatic about this, that you should be able to get out. And given the climate that we have in Barbados, given the expansive beaches and roads that we have in Barbados, except you are physically disabled, there is absolutely no excuse for not exercising. And there is another very practical reason for it. Those who exercise, do balance training, and keep themselves in good shape have less tendency to fall. It's only fairly recently that I looked at the data of falls in the elderly and was I'm going to show that, absolutely shocked. I said, this is from the United States and from CDC, 1 out of 4 older adults falls each year. As a result of falls, every 11 seconds, an older adult is treated in the emergency room, and every 19 minutes, an older adult dies because of a fall. And falls are the leading cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries among older adults, causing hip fractures, head trauma, and death. And older adults are hospitalized for fall-related injuries 5 times more often than for injuries from other causes. I'm sure that there's some among you who have fallen, but having fallen, you needn't wait until you have a fall, God forbid that you do, to put in place those measures to make it less likely that you fall. I know from experience that as one gets older, your balance tends to deteriorate, your balance deteriorates. You have to be much more cautious about how you move around quickly, and where you walk and how you walk, etc. But the deterioration of your balance is no excuse for not taking exercise regularly. And I'm sorry if I harp on this so much, because the benefits of exercise are great and they last. You have better cognitive ability, less cardiovascular disease, less metabolic disease, and I said less, your bones are in better shape. So if you exercise and you fall, you're less likely to have a hip fracture than the persons who are couch potatoes. You must pardon me being so emphatic about this need for all of us to exercise. And I say, what's your diet? And I'm not going to go into the numbers. Everyone knows that you should take fruits and vegetables. Everyone knows that you should go gently on the pork and beef. I think that I'm not sure that everyone would agree that you have to go lightly on the macaroni and cheese. But let me warn you, I've reckoned that about a modest cupful of macaroni and cheese is about 600 calories. And the average adult male, the average male over 70, he only needs about 2,000 calories if he's not very active, and about 1,600 calories a day, about 2,600 calories a day if he's moderately active. So if you put in 500 calories for macaroni and cheese, you don't leave much for anything else. And the average female about the age of 70 needs about 1,600 calories per day. And the point is always made that your caloric requirements go down as you get older. Your metabolism slows and you go down as you get older. So watch those Shirley biscuits. Every Shirley biscuit has about 35 calories. So you watch those Shirley biscuits. I shouldn't say that. People will say I'm against Shirley biscuits, they're delicious. But for Shirley biscuits, like everything else, nothing in excess. I mentioned sugar sweetened beverages, SBS, and was so pleased to hear your president mention that they were part of the strong advocacy with HCC for government to increase the tax, have a higher tax on sugar sweetened beverages. Sugar sweetened beverages are nutrient empty and a great contributor to increasing weight. So please cut down on this also, or eliminate. There's nothing better than plain water. And I say nothing in excess. This, Andrew will tell you, this is an old Greek motto. Above the temple of Apollo at Delphi is a Greek phrase, median agan, nothing in excess, moderation in all things. And some of the best philosophy, the Taoist philosophy, will point out that the three critical virtues for good living, compassion, moderation, and the other one is compassion and moderation. The third one escapes me at the moment. Three good virtues: compassion, moderation. I made a note of it here so I wouldn't forget it, and I've forgotten it. And also maintain a healthy weight. And this goes along with your exercise and your diet. Weight gain is problematic in the elderly. And as we go older, there is a tendency to gain weight. But I reject the thesis that obesity is automatic as you grow old. If you continue to exercise, if you're careful of your diet, there is no reason why you should become obese as you grow older. And obviously, I don't have to point out the numerous complications with the obese elderly. And my commandment is this, that this is one of the areas in which the discipline inculcated at the level of the young. I'm so pleased here you are speaking of 40-year-olds as joining BARP. That is the kind of discipline you need to inculcate. Each one of us needs to inculcate in order to maintain a healthy weight. Because as what the women say, a minute on the lips and a month on the hips, something like that. I hope I probably got it wrong, but there is no, and the point I always make, I used to make to my patients, it is never too late to start. It is no point saying, oh, I'm overweight, I can't bother. It is never too late to start. Andrew alluded to this, that the obesity in girls 15 to 19 and the percentage of obesity is rising astronomically in young people. And obesity in adults 18 plus is also increasing from 2019 in both men and women. Males used to pride themselves that they didn't really get fat as they got older. Nonsense. In Barbados, the adults, males, are getting increasingly fat, as well as what's been known of the adult females. And one of the things that concerns me a lot, this is something we've known for years, but we've not been able to instill the kind of discipline in ourselves. And we've not to have, and also have the societal changes in order to facilitate us not losing the weight, not gaining weight so rapidly. And I would hope that we'll see the same kind of attention that's been paid to sugar-sweetened beverages, paid to other things that would facilitate Barbadians not gaining weight as rapidly as they are doing. Number 4, get enough sleep. It is a myth that older persons need less sleep. And I say ideally you should have about 8 hours a night and avoid heavy meals and coffee late at night. And it's also true that those persons who take regular exercise have better and deeper and more satisfying sleep. So get enough sleep. And number 5, beware of alcohol. No, I would never say to people that they should not take alcohol. And I tell the story that when I was in Jamaica in practice, a professor of medicine, a professor of psychiatry, whose major field of research was alcohol. And one time I said to him, Michael Bobran,
Sir George Alleyne.
Yes?
Talking on health in the elderly.
I was saying, shall I go on? I was saying that I said to Michael Bobran, Michael, I'm worried, because I like alcohol. And he quickly said, don't worry at all. You will not become an alcoholic, because really alcoholics don't like alcohol. I'm not sure how true that is, but I repeat that to my friends all the time. Those who take an occasional drink, they're not going to become alcoholics. But you shouldn't as the persons get older, they have to be aware of the fact that alcohol is often a major factor in their propensity to fall. If your balance is poor to start with, and alcohol, the unsteadiness that comes from drinking, it will be another contributing factor to your falling. The next one is, I said, Commandment 6, exercise your brain. The mental agility is terribly important. And I think the discipline of reading is something should be inculcated earlier. But I'm pleased to note the efforts BARP makes to encourage its members to read, join book clubs. I suggest take a new class, do something else. Take a dancing class, take a modeling class, do the crossword puzzles, learn a new skill. Don't sit and do nothing. That's one of the worst things for the elderly, to sit and do nothing. 7, don't smoke. There is no justification for smoking. I said is, if you smoke, please quit. Tobacco is bad for your health, it's bad for your looks, it gives you more wrinkles, it's bad for your pocket, and it's bad for you, your status among friends and family, and it's bad for the environment. There is no plus at all about smoking. And I'm pleased to see that Barbados has done relatively well in terms of its percentage of the population that smokes. Commandment 8 is socialize. It is to spend time with others. And this is one of the things I heard your president speak about, volunteering and trying to visit and relate to those who are shut in and have no opportunity for socialization. Seek fellowship, whether in groups in the church, in your lodges, in clubs, but for God's sake, avoid isolation. There is every indication that isolation, loneliness is a predictor of poor health. So socialization, I think, is terribly important. And commandment number 9 is something that may surprise you. When I was in practice, I used to say this more often than now, be positive about sex. There is the tendency, especially among the young, to think of the older persons, the dirty old men, or the cougars, referring to women who have relationships with younger men, and snigger at the old men or old women having sexual urges. But I contend that, and I used to say to my patients, I remember more than one being shy about admitting that she had continued to have the sex urge. Intimacy is important for humans, and enjoy sex and variation of sexual activity as long as you can. Physical insertion is not the only aspect of sex, and not the only aspect of sex that humans enjoy. There are many other forms in which intimacy and sexual intimacy can be expressed. So I always used to say to my older persons, down with the stories about having sex being dirty. Down with it for older people, down with those stories. Please enjoy yourselves. And people can, as long as they're physically able, they should go on to have sex. And I said, ignore the myths of sexual ageism, or the younger people sniggering at the older people because they desire to have sex and continue to engage in sexual activity. It is good for your health to continue, for your mental health, to continue to look for, provided you have the appropriate partner, to look for and enjoy sexual intimacy. And the last commandment is start early. It is never too late to start, but it's good to start early. And I state that the variation in the health of older people is not random, but it's based a significant degree on the management of the life course. I'm very keen on the this attention to the life course. And healthy aging does not happen. One does not suddenly become healthy as one is older. It is a result of a lifetime of healthy habits. One of the things that is quite clear now, going back to one of the factors that contribute to this morbidity, we need to compress the chronic diseases. We know that the risks and the adoption of risk factors often starts early in life. So we are very keen to say to people to start from early, start throughout the life course, emphasizing the need for a healthy life, emphasizing the need to avoid the risk factors that contribute to these chronic diseases, to emphasize the need for the kind of social associations and social relationships that are so important as one gets older. I listened to an interview that your president, Ms. Marlene, gave to, I think it was Lisa Ford, Ms. Bryce Bowen gave to Lisa Ford. And I was so pleased to hear her speaking about incorporating the 40-year-olds. And she gave one, the sort of reason for it, increasing the tax, the revenue base. But she also mentioned that it's good to inculcate, and in this, I am 1,000% with her in this, inculcating these habits at an early age. And when I was a little boy going to Sunday school, I remember saying about train the tree in the way it should go. Well, that is so as far as healthy aging is concerned. You have to start to age healthily when you are young. So thank you very much indeed. And I hope that these 10 commandments, you can all follow them. And when we chat in person, when I come to Barbados, you can tell me how many of them you follow carefully and religiously. Thank you very much. Cannot hear you. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for all of the information that you shared this evening. This is, of course, an important part of the evening, and a very important segment where you get the opportunity to pose your questions and your queries directly to Sir George. As I said earlier, you can do so by simply putting your questions directly into the chat, and I will read those questions on your behalf, or you can use the raise your hand icon, and we can click on that so that you can share your questions directly. And let's see, I'm just checking for any questions. I do have a clarification though, Sir George, where you were talking about sex as part of healthy living. And you said start as early as possible. I just wanted some clarification on that.
No, I didn't refer to, that is a very controversial point. I mean, how early people should start having responsible sex. You notice that in my earlier slide, I said about 20, and that is, you say, people should start to have sex when they are responsible, when they begin to be responsible for their actions. If you are having sex too early, it's irresponsible.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that clarification. And again, I'm going to remind everybody you can pose your questions in the chat, and we can certainly share those questions with you. Okay. Okay, so here's a question. This question is from Nicole. She's asking, Sir George, if an older person is not sleeping for long, can this become a health issue, or can it be an indication of something else that's going on?
Is not for long, is not doing what?
If that person is, if they're not sleeping for very long, if they're not getting adequate sleep.
No. Yeah, insomnia can be due to many things, and it is not necessarily indication of a pathological condition, but also it can be an indication of a pathological condition. There are other reasons why people may not be able to sleep. But I would think the first thing is to look at your own domestic arrangements, for example. Do you watch television late into the night? Do you drink coffee late into the night? Do you watch movies late into the night? Do you go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and then your husband or your wife wakes you at 6 in the morning and you say you haven't had a lot of sleep? No, first of all, you take coffee late at night. So the first thing I would do is to look at your domestic relations. And when I was a practicing physician, I used to say to people, why don't you take a cup of warm milk or a cup of, in those days, a Barbadian would say to me, why not take Ovaltine or Milo, a cup of warm drink just before going to bed? And that kind of thing before, please don't lie in bed and watch television and then watch a horror movie and then complain that you can't sleep. But if it persists and all of those other simple relationships, simple actions don't have an effect, then I would suggest that you consult your medical practitioner.
Okay, and the idea of sleep deprivation, is it accurate to say that you can make up for it, do you think?
No, you don't make up sleep. You don't build up a debt and then pay it back. No. It neither positively or negatively.
Right, okay, so I have another question, and this person is asking, can you give examples of resistance training that would be age appropriate for older persons? Because you did mention the idea of balance, how important balance can be as well.
It depends on your physical state. I say you start with what you can manage. I found people starting with, say, these TheraBands. They come in different colors, green, yellow, et cetera, and just practice with these TheraBands. I've had people say, okay, why don't you start with just 2-pound weights and gradually increase the weights that you use from 2 pounds to 5 pounds to 10 pounds. But make sure also that your resistance training is distributed throughout the body. For example, weights, you can use weights, you can use sit-ups, you can use push-ups, you can use knee bends. All of those things which use your body weight for providing resistance are things you can do in the privacy of your bedroom.
Okay, and a follow-up question when you were talking about your age, you said you're going to be 90 or are you already 90?
In October the 7th, I'll be 90. So you can send me a card.
I'll do that. Because I'm learning now that you are a fellow Libra.
Yes.
Yes.
Balanced.
So having made that clarification, is absolutely evident that you have not slowed. And so people, I remember there was a time when you automatically thought that when you reach a certain age, it meant that dementia was automatic, and that's clearly not the case. So there's a person here who's asking, sometimes why do you see those stark differences where a person at 65 can already start being affected by dementia versus someone who's in their 90s or a centenarian who's completely lucid and fully aware?
Yes. If we knew the cause of dementia, first of all, there are many different causes of dementia. There can be vascular dementia, there can be Alzheimer's dementia, there can be Lewy dementia. There are different causes of dementia, and you can't generalize about dementia. Having said that, you can postpone the vascular dementia by some of the things I've been saying, or healthy living, about exercise, weight, et cetera, et cetera. The vascular aspects of dementia you can postpone or dampen. But vascular dementia is often one of the manifestations of cardiovascular ill health, which is often brought on by some of the risk factors that I mentioned before. But some of the dementias, there is no, I can't tell you why some people have Alzheimer's early on. Let me say this, Alzheimer's tends to have a greater degree of penetration the older you get. But no one knows there's a lot of research going into it. No one knows what is the cause of it. We know pathologically, but what induces it? We know when you look at a brain of a person who has Alzheimer's, we see the characteristic protein, but what generates it, what starts it? I don't think, unfortunate research has not taught us that yet. There's a lot of talk, much talk about drugs that improve your memory, improve your cognitive skills as you get older. The data on them are not as, let's put it, not as convincing as I would like to see them. Having said that, it is a myth that you don't slow as you get older. My memory now is not as good as it was 20 years ago. And sometimes you have to, you forget something, you have a bit of circumlocution to come to make the same point, or you can't remember a name. The thing to do is not to let that stop you from doing what you think you have to do. Sometimes you have to get around it, but that should not stop you from doing the things that you have to do. And like everything else, I think there is the old adage, you use it or you lose it. And that goes for your brain as well as other parts of your body.
In terms of the research around the brain and dementia, is there any research out there that shows there are higher numbers for either gender?
That I don't know. I should, but I don't know whether dementia, vascular dementia is commoner in the males, but I should know, I should know this, and I used to know it, but I don't know it now. I don't recall it now, whether the Alzheimer's is commoner in older males and females. It should be easy to find in Google, but I can't remember. I got another instance of something I can't remember. I used to know it, but I can't remember it now.
All right, so we have a question here from Ian Green, and Mr. Green is asking, what are some of the policies, in your opinion, that you think government can introduce to facilitate healthy aging? What are some of the governmental policies that can be introduced?
I suggest you go and read the Errol Barra lecture. There used to be a government paper on aging and a government policy on aging, but I can't find whether it has been adapted or modified or brought up to date recently. But some of the things that government can do, one is some of the efforts that are already being made in terms of the prevention of cardiovascular disease. I think that is something positive that government can do. The care of the elderly, I am not sufficiently familiar with the social services in Barbados to comment on the care of the elderly, to comment on whether there are enough social workers, whether enough home visitors, whether the pensions are adequate for elderly to exist or subsist or to live. Those things I wish I could comment on, but I don't have the data to be able to comment on them intelligently. Those I can't tell you. And the custodial care for relatives, for older people who have nowhere else to go, this is something that in other societies is done. And I can't comment as to the extent to which government does this or doesn't.
Okay.
I saw a question about some 76-year-old walking and they can't understand why they feel sleepy. That's a good question. And you know what my answer to that is? When you feel sleepy, sleep. If you feel sleepy in the middle of the day, you take a nap. And I guarantee it, After you have a good nap, after your walk, you will feel much better. The multivitamins for the older, that my view is that is good marketing. I belong to a school. My professor used to say, if you take a normal diet, you don't need multivitamins. Occasionally, you will need one specific vitamin. For example, our vitamin D requirements may go up as we get a little older. In that case, you can take vitamin D. But to take these large horse pills, vitamin pills, as a regular basis, thinking that you're vitamin deficient, I was brought up in the school to say that, no, I don't believe in them. I don't take them myself, I must confess. My doctor has said to me that I should take vitamin D on a regular basis, so I take it. But I don't subscribe to all these other multivitamins, which are touted by the companies. I haven't seen the data that they induce longevity, or they contribute to your increased mental acuity or your physical strength. If you have a vitamin deficiency, that's a different matter. So Andrew Down says, if I need vitamin D, move back to sunny Barbados. Okay, touche. Yes. You know, people also ask me, is there any research on how you can extend life? There's a lot of effort. A couple of billionaires have put a lot of research into how you can extend life. Is it possible? Because we know that in little worms and in mice and rats, you can extend the normal lifespan. You can so restrict caloric intake in rats and mice that they live longer than their cohorts who are fed a normal diet. We know that there's a lot of work done on several enzymes, sirtuins, which are supposed to control the length of a group of substances called telomeres, the length of which it controls your whether you live longer or not. But a lot of these are experimental, and they're found in experimental animals, and none of these really have had any repercussion, any echo in humans. There are some wealthy people who believe that aging is a technical problem, and if you can put a man in space, you should be able to solve it. But so far, they have not been very successful in doing so. Hello, Cecily. Hello, Leon.
So Sir George, interestingly enough, one of the things that you mentioned is,
What's that?
you mentioned is not taking any vitamins at all. I remember coming, are you hearing me now?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Fantastic. I remember coming across an interesting quotation that said you should use your food as your vitamins, otherwise your vitamins will become your food. What is your response to that?
Good for you, good for you, good for you, good for you, good for you. Repeat it every day. Good for you, good for you.
But so let's get real about sex for a second, because clearly it is something that we all need to get comfortable talking about. It's one of the most natural things in the world. If sex doesn't exist, then we don't exist. And so, but how, if we're talking about sex and older generations, we all know that with women, especially as you age, then lubrication becomes an issue. With gentlemen, erectile dysfunction may be an issue. How do you work around that? What are some of the ways that people can combat that?
Well,
so I'm
this is something
for people who might be shy to ask it.
When I was in practice, these were things that would come up all the time. One, a couple of things. One, in this day and age, there are so many lubricants that vaginal dryness should never be a cause for women not to have sex. Number one. Number two, as men get older, it becomes less possible to hold, maintain an erection. But number 3, sex is not only about penile insertion. The sex I'm talking about is not only about penile insertion. There are many ways for men and women to become intimate in the older ages without necessarily penile insertion. And if people, having said that, there are also surgical procedures that can restore men's sexual, the capacity for men to have an erection to such an extent that they can perform insertive sex. But I would emphasize that sexual intimacy does not turn only around penile insertion.
Okay, so we have a question here. This one is linked to nutrition. So
Can't hear you.
Bell, you're muted again. Bell, you are muted. We cannot hear you.
Okay, try again.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, you heard me now. Wonderful. So there's a question about a plant-based diet and how effective that is for healthy aging.
No, a plant-based diet, let's put it this way. If you are going to have the kind of animal protein that predisposes to cardiovascular disease, of course, you diminish your chances of having a healthy longevity. Having said that, you can base your diet entirely on plants and still live a very long and productive life, just as those who had a very sensible approach to meat-based diets. No doubt about it.
Okay, so one of the questions, actually Professor Downs is posting this question, and we know we've had a number of centenarians in Barbados, and they often talk about their belief system. They often reference a strong faith and belief system. How does that fit into your 10 commandments?
I can't comment about that. I am not a good person to comment about that because every person has his or her own religious beliefs and his or her own faiths. So I really can't comment about that. What I do know is that a lot of what is construed as religious practice has to deal with the associations that they have, the fact that they continue to meet in groups, they continue to contact one another, they're not socially isolated, etc., which all conduce to healthy aging. But if someone says to me that they believe that they think that a belief in some particular faith has contributed to their longevity, I cannot say neither yea nor nay. I'm completely agnostic in that area.
Okay, so here's another question. The focus is largely on reducing obesity among the elderly as with aging. More persons tend to gain weight, which is something you referenced. You talked about metabolism. And this person is asking, what approach would you recommend for those people who are genetically or otherwise become slimmer? So maybe you have a predisposition to weight gain, I think is what they're trying to ask.
The thesis, I know it is a common to say that I come from a big family. Nonsense. I come from a big bone family. Absolute nonsense. What has meant is that you've eaten more than the other persons. So I don't buy the idea that some people are genetic. They exist. There are genetic conditions and which propose to people being overweight, but they are very, very, very rare. There are hormonal conditions that predispose to people getting overweight, but that is very, very, very unusual. That is not the norm. That is not the normal reasons for people to gain weight. People gain weight because they take in too much and expend too little. So I don't,
But
I'm not
George, isn't
enthusiastic
that
about it.
shift?
Go ahead.
So, as a follow-on to what you're saying, especially with women, when you start to age and there's a hormonal shift, doesn't that affect your metabolism? And you could be exercising every day and still not see certain results because there's some sort of hormonal shift, especially for women?
Well, it is true that there's a tendency to gain weight, but you know what it is? Because your metabolism slows and your caloric requirements go down. Your caloric requirements go down. But if you persist in having the same dietary intake as you had when you're 50 and exercise less, and your metabolism slows, of course you will gain weight. Of course you will gain weight. It's inevitable. So the secret is that you should be conscious when you see slim centenarians, men and women. It is because their caloric intake has been enough to satisfy the metabolism and not such as to allow them to gain weight.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier, you talked about balance. And I remember talking to a physiotherapist, and one of the things that she shared with me is that even people who work out often, tend to overlook balance strengthening. So working on your ankles, working on your hips and your knees, and sort of focusing on those joints and basically strengthening your balance. What's your comment on that?
Well, if you go into Google, there's the whole range of exercises for people to strengthen their balance. There are exercises that strengthen your muscle and exercises that compensate for your loss of vestibular function. As you get older, your vestibular function tends to deteriorate and your balance tends to be less. You're more wobbly on your feet than before. So you compensate for it by doing specific exercises to compensate for that. And also exercise that you quite rightly say to strengthen your ankles, your joints, the muscles in your feet and in your legs. So I would recommend, I know you can go into Google and find, oh, God knows how many suggestions for exercises to improve your balance.
All right, so we have someone here, they're 74 years old, and she says she never had a weight problem throughout her life until she had a problem with her thyroid. She called it a thyroid ablation, I hope I'm saying it correctly. And she exercises, yet her weight is still increasing. She's taking medication. She's 74, she's active, which is something that I was alluding to, that sometimes there are other issues at play and it's not strictly just diet and movement. So what are your suggestions?
She needs to have that discussion with her physician. Right. And her physician, and as I see, what is her hormonal status, and what is her nutritional intake, et cetera, She needs to have that discussion with her physician. That needs to be an individual prescription. No one can make a generalization about that.
Okay, so George, I know when people hear the term healthy aging, they tend to think that we're strictly talking about the elderly, right? And the over 50 set. I don't agree with that, but however, what's your opinion on really and truly, I think we should be talking about this from zero age. What is your response?
About what? About what?
When it comes to healthy aging, I find that people tend to buy into the stereotype that if we're talking healthy aging and they hear those two words together, that we're talking about people who are 50 and older. I tend to lean towards the belief that we need to think about that from age 1, age 0. What's your opinion?
Well, as Professor Down says, we start to age, and the metabolic changes that lead to senescence start from day one. It is true. You're absolutely correct. And this is why I'm so pleased to hear your president in our interview, Lisa Ford, talk about starting early. You can't start too early to inculcate the habits that lead to a healthy old age. You can't emphasize so much that being healthy doesn't start with a bang. It doesn't say you get up one morning and say, I am healthy. No, it is a process that you have to continue to devote the necessary attention to this the process throughout the life course.
How much emphasis do you place on mindset and attitude?
How shall I put it this way? The discipline to maintain the 10 Commandments, if you call that a mindset, then I would agree with you. But I'm not quite sure how else to categorize a mindset. If you mean a state of mind that permits discipline and permits organized thought and organized attention to the problems that would mitigate against a healthy aging, then I would agree with you. But I can't think that there's any particular, in other words, you don't go into a corner and think about it and become healthy. You don't do that. The people who practice it say that meditation is very, I have no experience, so I can't comment on it. Whether those who contend that the practice of meditation is also good in terms of maintaining a healthy attitude and a healthy body.
And so, okay, so you're planning your 90th birthday, but what is your dates, your morning routine like?
No. Let us deal with generalities. I don't quote myself. Let us deal with generalities. Let's deal with generalities.
All right, so remember you
just
can
to
get
say,
your question.
I try to practice what I preach.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what we're getting at. That's what we're getting at. So we have less than 15 minutes left now. So for anyone who's wishing to get their questions or their comments in to Sir George, that will be a wonderful time to do so. This is an awesome opportunity to be able to interface with him directly. Any other comments, Sir George, that you'd like to add at this time?
Now I've spoken enough. I mean, you've heard enough of me. Let me be quite serious. I appreciate the opportunity. I went into the website and I listened to the interview that Ms. Bryce Bowen had with Lisa Ford, and I was really very, very impressed with her articulation about the objectives of BARP and the plans for BARP and the possibilities for BARP. And that inspired me to really look more into your website and some of the things that you say on your website. That's how I would know that, for example, that there are 54 establishments that accept a BARP card. I was very impressed with her clear exposition of the relevance. And one of the points that she made was that BARP being an agent for social change. When you mentioned, and she mentioned earlier, BARP being a member of HCC, I was so pleased that they felt that they could make common cause with Healthy Caribbean Coalition in terms of addressing the problem of non-communicable diseases.
Right.
So congratulations, Mrs. Rice Bowen.
Oh, fantastic. And I have another question from one of our attendees here, and they're asking about fasting. Actually, I'm hearing that a buzz around fasting a lot these days. What is your?
I don't know. I have no views because I am complete. It's not a subject that I have researched. It's something I don't practice, so I really have no views on it. I have no views on it. What I do know that when I was in practice, that those persons who fasted usually had binge eating after the fast. Persons who, fasted and lost weight, and et cetera, in a little while they had gained almost gained all the weight they had lost. They overcompensated after the fast, but I have no, I've never looked into the issue of fasting being a contributor to healthier aging, or fasting contributing to longevity. As I said before, there are good studies in mice and rats. And this is going back years when I was a young physician, our professor of pathology, Jared Brass, had very good data already that if you fed groups of rats very calorie restricted diets, they live longer than their cohorts. And this is that kind of study has been validated over and over again in rats and mice about severe calorie restriction and longevity. But it's not the kind of thing I would be recommending for humans, that kind of severe calorie restriction.
All right, so we're coming up to our final questions, and this person is asking, what can we, there are a lot of fast food operations in Barbados, they're saying, and a Barbadian diet, a Caribbean diet for that matter, tends to be heavy in salt and sodium. Is there any room for interventions in that area?
Certainly, and I'm sure you've heard Professor Fassel talk about sodium and the idea of reducing the salt in Barbadian food and reducing the sugar. Something I was amazed to find out that some of the sugar-sweetened beverages that are promoted in Barbados have higher sugar contents than they have in the United States. But the more specific answer to your question, issue of salt, and the idea is to persuading manufacturers of foods to reduce their salt intake. And you know, there's a major Caribbean effort on reducing salt overall in foods. And both the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, PAHO, et cetera, have all been very active in trying to get governments to introduce legislation that would address the issue of salt in foods. And one of the things that the Healthy Caribbean Coalition and others of us have been very enthusiastic about is for getting food manufacturers to have labels on their products that say what is in those labels. We feel very strongly that every individual has the right to know what he or she is eating. And there's a lot of pushback from manufacturers about how difficult it is, but we keep contending that it is the right thing for manufacturers of foods in Barbados to have on those foods some indication of what foods are high in fats, high in sugar, et cetera, et cetera. This is one of the things that we hope we can persuade governments to take a stand on, to be able to make it mandatory for sellers, manufacturers and sellers of these foods to have on the packages the kinds of labels that indicate what the public is consuming.
Okay, and our final question this evening, this person is asking, and I think this person is very inspired by a lot of what they heard here this evening. And they're saying if they want to embark, they've been pretty inactive and they want to embark upon an exercise regime, but we've always heard you should first consult your physician.
Yeah.
That's of course true, right?
Yeah, good idea. Good idea. But you're never too late to start.
You said it's never too late to start?
Never. It's never too early to start. It's never too late to start.
That's true. Thank you so much, Sir George. Thank you so much to everybody who has attended. And we're going to take this opportunity to hear directly from Miss Monica Hines, who is the BARP treasurer here, who will deliver the vote of thanks. So we're going to take this opportunity to say welcome to Ms. Monica Hines.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you all. President of BARP, Marlon Rice-Bowen, Sir George Alleyne, BARP directors and trustees who might have joined us, members and potential members, management and staff, other guests who may be on the Zoom with us this evening. Good evening to you all. First, on behalf of the entire BARP constituents and also of our guests, I am happy to extend our thanks, appreciation, and gratitude to Sir George Alleyne for such an informative, excellent, and well-delivered session. It is a reminder to all of us of the importance of healthy living. I will certainly try to live by the mantra that as I get older, I refuse to get old. I love that saying. I absolutely love it. And I also encourage all of us, as far as it is possible, to live by his 10 commandments. Sir George, I'm happy to advise that Surfside Wellness Center has for many years offered a good discount to our members. I'm not sure why it's not mentioned in the booklet. And I also noticed in the chat that Twin Gym offers discounts to the 50 plus, and their oldest member is 85 years of age. This is not an ad for them, but I thought that I should mention it. So George, your presentation this evening reinforced for me that the right choice of speaker was made for this very important topic. Thank you on behalf of all of us. Thank you. Poet Laureate Esther Phillips for her poem, Village Keepers. Very apt and appropriate, as well as a timely reminder to those of us who have been fortunate to live through those village days. Dogs howling, duppies prowling, the works. We all know and remember what it's like. Thank you, Poet Laureate Esther. I should also mention she was my school friend. I like to say that. Professor Andrew Downs, also a BARP director, for such a comprehensive, professional, and sometimes light-hearted introduction of Sir George. Obviously a good introduction, as Sir George himself made very many references to it throughout his, to your introduction, throughout his presentation. To our indomitable president, Marlin Rice Bowen, for her insightful welcome. And I can say, without any fear of contradiction, that Marlin is very committed to the elderly, not just BARP members, but to the elderly generally, to healthy living, and to ensuring that the powers that be recognize the need to assist the elderly as the former workers and movers and shakers of our society, and who have now reached the evening of their years. And Marlin, we thank you for all of that, and we thank you for your welcome this evening. To the Secretariat staff in general, Lex Smith, who did the email blast, all of you, management of BARP as well, who managed the administrative processes involved in this evening's production. We thank you all very much for it. Bella as MC, also as coordinator of the event, developing the marketing materials and liaising with Sir George. We thank you very much as we welcome you on board with BARP. And of course, very importantly, all of you who took the time to join us this evening, thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope that you would have found it as stimulating and enlightening as I did. And I encourage you to continue to support BARP, 1, and 2, to join us as with our various presentations that we will put on. Some of them later in content, and some of them more professional, more educational, more informative. And we encourage you to join us. Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful evening. Belle, over to you. And you're on mute.
And speaking of some of those lighter events, as a matter of fact, coming Saturday, which is March 19th, we're going to have the second session of A Word with You, which is in collaboration with Writers Inc. And that session is a virtual poetry and literary session, which begins on at 4:30 p.m. this coming Saturday. And last Saturday, if you missed the first session, it was absolutely wonderful. We would have had some poetry, we had fiction as well, and there was also an opportunity for some Q&A with the writers, which was just as much fun when you get to dig deeper into the material. It was a wonderful experience. So save the date, this coming Saturday. It's a virtual event hosted by BARP and Writers Inc. Starts at 4:30 p.m. sharp, goes until 6 o'clock. You can have your front row seat right in your home. You can save the Zoom link that we use today. It'll be the same information. And that event starts at 4:30 p.m. Remember, you can contact BARP at 538-2277, 538-2277 with any questions you may have. If you know anyone who has not yet signed up for their BARP membership, then you definitely need to encourage them to do so. And if you need information, you can always email us info@barpbb.org, info@barpbb.org. I want to thank Sir George one more time, and of course, everyone who worked behind the scenes to pull the entire event together. One of the most important things that we can do today as we wrap up is whatever nugget of information you receive, you apply it to your life to make sure that you have a better quality of life. My name is Belle Holder. On behalf of everyone at the Barbados Association of Retired Persons, we wish you safety and wellness. Good evening, everybody.